wanted to ask you about the comment of the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations. He defended Israel's actions as a justified response. This is Dan Gillerman.
As we sit here during these very difficult days, I urge you and I urge my colleagues to ask yourselves this question. What would you do if your countries found themselves under such attacks? If your neighbors infiltrated your borders to kidnap your people, and if hundreds of rockets were launched at your towns and villages? Would you just sit back and take it, or would you do exactly what Israel is doing at this very minute?
That was Dan Gillerman, the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations. Noam Chomsky, your response.
He was referring to Lebanon rather than Gaza.
He was.
Yeah. Well, he's correct that hundreds of rockets have been fired, and naturally that has to be stopped. But he didn't mention, or maybe at least in this comment, that the rockets were fired after the heavy Israeli attacks against Lebanon, which killed, well, latest reports, maybe 60 or so people, and destroyed a lot of infrastructure. As always, things have precedence, and you have to decide which was the inciting event. In my view, the inciting event in the present case, the events are those that I mentioned. The constant, intense repression, plenty of abductions, plenty of atrocities in Gaza, the steady takeover of the West Bank, which in effect, if it continues, is just the murder of a nation. That's the end of Palestine. The abduction on June 24th of the two Gaza civilians, and then the reaction to the abduction of Corporal Shalit. And there's a difference, incidentally, between abduction of civilians and abduction of soldiers. Even international humanitarian law makes that distinction.
Can you talk about what that distinction is?
If there's a conflict going on, decide whether to call war or not, but a military conflict going on, abduction, if soldiers are captured, they are to be treated humanely, but it is not a crime at the level of capture of civilians and bringing them across the border into your own country. That's a serious crime, and that's the one that's not reported. And in fact, remember that, I want to tell you that there are constant attacks going on in Gaza, which is basically a prison, huge prison, under constant attack all the time. Economic strangulation, military attack, assassinations, and so on. In comparison with that, abduction of a soldier, whatever one thinks about it, doesn't rank high in the scale of atrocities. The United States regards Israel as virtually a militarized offshoot, and it protects it from criticism or actions, and supports it tacitly and, in fact, overtly supports its expansion, its attacks on Palestinians, its progressive takeover of what remains of Palestinian territory, and its acts to, actually realize a comment that Moshe Dayan made back in the early 70s when he was responsible for the occupied territories. He said to his cabinet colleagues, we should tell the Palestinians that we have no solution for you. You will live like dogs, and whoever will leave, and we'll see where that leads. And that's basically the policy, and I presume the U.S. will continue to advance that policy in one or another fashion.